This is the CineSnob Podcast.
Hey there, welcome to episode 279 of the CineSnob Podcast. I'm Jerrod Kingery.
I'm Cody Villafania.
Cody, Austin Film Festival.
Yeah.
You were at the film festival. We talked a little bit about it, I guess last week or maybe the week before. You previewed it.
Yeah.
But you went to the festival. So what was your experience there, Cody?
Yeah, it was great. I mean, it was my triumphant return, of course, as we talked about. It'd been a while since I've been there, and especially in person at the festival, and it was good to be back. And you know, it's just an interesting thing to like maybe juxtapose it to one of the other big festivals in Austin, where it's a little bit chaotic and there's a lot going on, and it's definitely not that level of like intensity, which is nice. And one of the cool things I like is that it's at a few different locations, but they also use a local Austin theater as like a hub where they've got like 3 different screens, and you could basically spend all day there and still see a lot of great movies without having to deal with like parking and being downtown. And so that's what I did. I for some of it, I spent it at the Galaxy Highland Theater.
We go there quite a bit for screenings.
Yeah,
it's been nicely remodeled in the last few years.
Yeah, so when I walked in, I was like, "This is familiar," and I feel like I've been to maybe like I want to say like The Last Jedi or something might have been there. Like,
no, that was at a Regal.
I want to say like
you and
either
I were there.
Star Wars or a Marvel screening I've been at that theater, but I couldn't quite place it.
Typically the Disney ones are at a Regal just up the road from there.
Because I
don't remember.
I know that the last Star Wars movie was at one of the Regals. What was it? The Rise of
Regal
Skywalker.
Regal, the Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah.
That was at Regal Gateway. It might have been at Galaxy. It's possible.
Yeah.
I know the first film I ever saw there. This is when I still lived in San Antonio. I had the day off, and they were only screening X-Men First Class in Austin, and I drove up to see it at Galaxy Highland.
Yeah.
And I remember they couldn't get the key to work, so they had to be like, "Come back tomorrow." I was like, "Son of a bitch."
That has happened to me for an Austin drive before as well. So,
yeah.
but like I heard people online talking about just like camping out at Galaxy Highland all day, which is super cool to be able to do that. You know, that's one of the best things about Fantastic Fest is that you don't have to leave your spot. And definitely during South by, I stayed at Lamar for an entire day and not had to move. So, you know, I like that you can do that there. And then I just thought I'd mention like a couple of highlights of the movies that I saw. The first one was a movie called The Promised Land. And this was a movie that is coming out later this year. It's the Denmark entry for the Best International Film, so the Danish entry. Stars Mads Mikkelsen. It's like a historical drama, basically about a poor soldier who decides that he wants to try to build a farm on and cultivate land that's not been able to be cultivated. And if he's able to successfully do it, he gets to be in charge of settlers, and he gets like a mansion and all this stuff. And there's it's contested that land actually belongs to like a villainous character, and they sort of go through time and try to, fight each other through, figuring out who the land belongs to and trying to farm and cultivate the land. And I thought it was really solid. For me, I think that Mads Mikkelsen is one of the most captivating actors around, and I really love watching him. And it's interesting to watch him perform in his native language of Danish, and I guess there's some German in there too. But I think he's a really great actor, and so he kind of commands the screen and does a really great job. And I don't know that it'll get nominated for Best International Feature, but maybe we'll see. I also watched a movie that was interesting. Speaking of, I saw this one at the Galaxy Highland, a movie called Robot Dreams, which was an animated film that's out of Spain, but it sort of takes place in like the 80s in New York. and it doesn't have any dialogue, so it's like a feature length movie that's that has no dialogue. It's basically about this this dog is like a lonely dog that lives in Manhattan by himself and decides to buy a robot, and then they become like really close. But then when they go and visit the beach over the summer, the robot malfunctions and the dog can't get the robot out of the beach, and basically at that point they have to spend like the winter, the beach closes for the winter, and they have to spend like a couple seasons apart until he can go back and fetch the robot. And so it's about
Fetch.
yeah,
Because he's a dog.
I did it on purpose.
Okay, good.
Yeah, and so it kind of tells the story about their friendship growing and loneliness, and then they're forced to kind of move on without each other, and then how they reunite. And it's really solid. It's being put out by Neon later this year, and it does have that thing of like a short film stretched out into a feature, especially because it doesn't have dialogue. But I also think that the strength of the movie is like that it's able to work without dialogue. The animation is like 2D, hand drawn, sort of like nothing special. It kind of looks like a cartoon that you would see on TV, really.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. It looks very it has like a Futurama vibe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And it's funny at times. It's got some tug on the heartstring stuff in it. But I'd be curious to see what you think about it, and maybe we'll review it as it becomes closer.
It's based on a graphic novel I see here
really?
too. Yeah,
I
based
did not know
on
that part.
English language. Well, I don't know if there's I'm sorry, a North American. She's from Chicago. The graphic novelist Sarah Varon looks like is her name.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, and I just looked up the cover of it, and it looks like the animation is sort of like an enhanced version of what you're seeing there, but relatively like the same design of the characters and stuff. So that's cool.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, it looks very like the robot has a very Bender from Futurama.
Oh, you know what's interesting is that I'm looking at on like Google Books and previewing the graphic novel, and it looks like there's no dialogue in the graphic novel either. It's just
I'm sure that would be the case. English language was misspeak there. So yeah.
Yeah. So that was good. And then on the smaller side, because there's, I think both of those were in the marquee section. On the smaller side, there was a movie called Christmas. It's like Christmas, but MESS, And that was an Australian movie, basically about a guy who was like kind of like an out of work but still kind of famous actor who had just gotten out of rehab and for alcoholism, and was trying to get back on his feet, and like the struggle to go to like sober living home and like deal with his problems, dealing with sobriety, dealing with some family issues. And I thought that it was just a really like understated, accurate, well done look into that world. I've professionally done some work with in that environment, working with addicts and stuff like that. And so I thought it was really authentic. I think that, it's more of a character study than anything else watching this guy, but it authentically tells the story of like, how sometimes with people like, rehab isn't something that just kind of like works the first time around. Sometimes there's struggles, there's relapses a lot of the time, people having to come to terms with like, they've ruined relationships and how to regain them and regather them and repair them. And I thought it did a really good job of illustrating that. And, good dialogue. It has some realism in terms of the relationships between, the main character and someone else living in the home, and then this guy who serves as a sponsor. So I thought that was well done. And then, some stuff that was like, was still decent but didn't work entirely. Like there was a movie called The Problem with People that was pretty decent. It was part of the marquee programming. It was starred Paul Reiser and was co-written by Paul Reiser, and also starred Cole Meany, the Irish actor, and
from Star Trek Deep Space Nine, famously. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I know him from a bunch of like random stuff.
Yeah. I mean, he's been in a bunch of Irish films, but he had he was a regular on Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, a great actor. And basically that movie was about like this Irish family who has like a family history where there were like the great grandfathers or whatever were brothers, and then one of them stayed in America or went to America, the other stayed in Ireland, and then they were estranged for like generations, and they finally decide that they want to mend things. And so Paul Reiser's the American version. He comes over to Ireland and then figures out, through a series of events that he was left a lot of property that his cousin, played by Cole Meany, doesn't think that he should have access to. And so it basically escalates into like a war of passive aggression as they kind of battle each other through that process. And, it's definitely funny. There's definitely some fun in the escalation of things. There's some great scenery looking at Ireland. I do think that it ends a little bit abruptly and kind of has like a twist in it that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense and served as just like a means to end the movie. But that being said, enjoyable to watch those two play off of each other. So, all in all, some solid stuff, and glad that I got to go and check these films out.
Cool. Yeah, I know it's been it is one of those kind of under the radar festivals here in Austin. Like you said, it's really screenwriter focused for a lot of it. So cool. Good experience. I went, I've told you this story. And I think I told on the podcast, I've been years ago. So it's been probably 20 years since I've been to that festival. One day I'll go back. I don't know when, but one day.
Yeah.
Anything else before we move on, Cody?
No, I look forward to hopefully covering the film next year, and let's go ahead and move forward.
All right, let's get started on reviews.
Here are this week's reviews.
First up, we have Quiz Lady.
And your time starts now. What is the square root of 196?
14.
Ron.
14.
Correct. How many hearts does an octopus have?
3.
Ron.
3.
Correct.
What?
Spice is derived from Crocus sativus?
Saffron.
I feel like an answer hog, but saffron.
Correct.
Carbon dioxide.
Very good.
Wellington, New Zealand.
Correct.
Saturn. Our American cousin. The equal sign.
Harry Potter.
The Hobbit.
Correct.
All right.
Ron, please list for us the gods of Mount Olympus.
Aphrodite, Apollo, Ares, Artemis, Athena, Demeter, Dionysus, Hephaestus. Hey.
Why haven't you gone on that show? Are you scared that you would win so much money that people will try and kill you for it? That's a thing with lottery winners.
No, it's not.
Are you scared that your hatred for that Ron guy is actually a sexual attraction that you wouldn't know how to navigate in person?
No.
This is a Hulu movie, as you see there, starring Awkwafina and Sandra Oh. Cody, tell us about Quiz Lady and what you thought of it.
Yeah, so this was a movie that wasn't really on my radar at all until I remembered that it came out, and we got a screener letter for it. I'm like, oh, what is this? And so it's produced under the sort of under the Gloria Sanchez production company, which is like the sister label of Gary Sanchez, which is Will Ferrell and Adam McKay, but it also has Jessica Alba, who does the Gloria Sanchez part with Will Ferrell, which is sort of like
you didn't say Alba, you said album.
Yeah,
right?
Elbaum.
Yeah. I heard Alba first. I was like, what?
No, Jessica
No,
Elbaum. I'll enunciate better.
I thought when I first read her name, I thought it was E-Bomb, like
E-Bomb's World.
I was like, oh, it's the E-Bomb fortune. Anyway.
Yeah, and so and basically they're there to sort of it's mostly like female directed and written projects, and like this one which is both written and directed by females, and yeah, so it stars Awkwafina and Sandra Oh as sisters who Awkwafina's character is sort of like obsessed with this game show, but she's sort of a little bit of a hermit. And then she has a sister who's like the complete opposite, who is really outgoing and crazy and chaotic. And basically what happens is their mother collected gambling debt, and then Awkwafina's dog gets kidnapped, and they have to figure out how to get the money back to recover the gambling debt. The dog was kidnapped by the people that the mom owns the debt to, and so they finally decide to try to get her onto this trivia show. I maybe forgot to mention that I did mention that she's obsessed with the trivia show. So get her on. You
could see it in that clip, yeah.
To win the money, and so it involves like a heightened level of hijinks where like she ends up going viral, and and Sandra Oh's character kind of pushes her to break out of her shell in her comfort zone. And I think the movie is a little bit of a mixed bag. I mean, I think ultimately at the end of the day, it is successful, but it's a mixed bag in terms of its tone and a little bit of its energy. I think across the board, I really liked the performances, and I think it's the thing that stands out the most. I think Awkwafina is really good in this. I think that it's interesting to see her play a character that is like relatively like low key as opposed to being like the high level kind of crazy character, which I think that she's kind of settled into. So it allows for when she does tap into that, for it to have a better effect. Like there's a scene in the movie where she's under the influence where she gets to like have that crazier side shine. And I think that works because she's so subdued the rest of the movie. I think Sandra Oh is good here, playing the kind of like chaotic, crazy type role that maybe Awkwafina would have played in another, if the roles were reversed. You could easily see her in that. But I thought that she did a great job. There's some smaller roles in here. I think Tony Hale is really funny in a very small part, where he plays like the hotel owner and manager or whatever of like a Ben Franklin themed hotel, and but he is pretending like he is. It's sort of aped from The Office.
Yeah, that's
joke.
what I was gonna say. It's kind of ripped off from is that
It's
Andy Daly?
who-
Yeah.
But it is still funny. And then like and weirdly, so Will Ferrell is also in the movie as the quiz show host. And so he's producing the movie, but he's also in it. And it's like, I thought weirdly a great Will Ferrell performance. Like one of my favorite performances he's given in a while, where he's sort of like the kind of like the emotional grounding center of the movie as this host. And it's like a really like reined in but sweet performance where I actually thought it kind of holds the final act together, which I was not expecting from that character. I thought it was just going to be like a glorified cameo, but he actually gets some really good moments.
Yeah.
And I do think that's where the movie ultimately like settles, is in that third act when, the beginning of the movie is her trying to get over her resistance to like going on TV and being in this show. And I think they drag that out a little bit, but once they kind of settle into like, okay, she's agreed to go. And then you have like the fallout and the trip and then the actual show, which also has like a great Jason Schwartzman performance in it too, as like the smarmy, fellow contestant. I think it settles in, and I think the third act of the movie for me was my favorite part. And it kind of settles into this, you want to root for this person, and hits those kind of points of like the underdog story. So, I thought it's enjoyable. It's definitely got some really funny laugh out loud moments. It's got some good like non sequitur lines that are really funny. It's got a weird cameo in it that is like, just, I don't know.
It's a bittersweet cameo at this point.
The joke of it is funny, I think.
Yeah. I'll get into that a little more when I talk about it, but I'll let you wrap up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's basically it. I mean, like I said, I think it's decent enough. I wish that it kind of had a consistent tone. I wish that it either went, really far over and was like a little bit more like either raunchy or like hijinksy, or I wish that it was like more subdued and stayed in that tone and was more like family drawn and serious. But it kind of fluctuates between the two, and I just wanted some consistency from it.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I think that my preference would have been for it to go broader, because broader and weirder, because I don't think it really settles on a tone in between there very well. There's a few things that aren't super fleshed out that just sort of wrap up. Like there's you mentioned the dog being kidnapped for the gambling debts. That story just sort of peters away at some point. There's a subplot about Sandra Oh's character essentially suing a chain restaurant for money that kind of just peters out at the end. And then, like I mentioned, there's the cameo that's set up. I guess we should just say it, right? Because I think it's out there.
It's been announced, yeah.
It's Paul Rubens. And the joke is set up that Holland Taylor plays Awkwafina's kind of overbearing, like busybody neighbor who's scared of everything. And she's a huge fan of Alan Cumming, but she mistakes a headshot of Paul Rubens for Alan Cumming, which is a funny joke. It doesn't really go anywhere until the very end of the film. They're on the studio lot, and Paul Rubens drives by on a golf cart, which is it's fine. But in a better, crazier movie, that would have been a bigger payoff.
Yeah.
And then the film ends like with some, as though it were a true story, like kind of updating, where all the characters are, and it's really wacky. Like it's really bizarre, and it's a tone that doesn't really fit with the rest of the movie. Yeah, I don't think. So I do agree that it does get better at the end, but I think that last sort of 5 minutes of the film really illustrates what could have come before it if it stayed with a consistent tone and stayed with something that was a little more just kind of out there and wacky. And like you mentioned about Will Ferrell, he's kind of toned down his roles in the last few years. He's no longer like that crazy kind of chaotic, weird man-child character anymore. And I think most recently in Barbie, you see him kind of play subdued. In this movie, he plays subdued. And then even Spirited last year. Did you ever watch that with Ryan Reynolds?
I didn't see it. No.
It's not great, but it's still sort of not the Will Ferrell performance you might have expected, 20 year ago, 15 years ago. I don't mind it. It's just, it's different than what you're used to. And I like Awkwafina a lot in this. I think Sandra Oh gets some interesting stuff to do. Again, there's another, like a backstory in this that I don't think gets fleshed out a lot either. About kind of their childhood, or I guess Awkwafina's childhood and Sandra Oh's teenage years. I just feel like there's some dots that weren't connected, and there's like maybe some tone problems moving through the film as maybe it was being edited. I don't know what the story is, but I think it's fine. I think there's a much, much funnier movie in this somewhere if it had decided to stick with something that was a little more kind of off the wall than what we got. Anyway, what's your grade for Quiz Lady, Cody?
I give it a B-. It's certainly watchable enough. I think it's a good like time passer. Or if you're flipping through Hulu and looking for something to watch, I do think that it's worthwhile. I don't think that it's like amazing or anything, but it's worth your time.
Yeah, B- for me too. It's good enough. Again, basically no promotion for this, if I can recall. It seems to be the fate of these 20th Century Studios movies to go to Hulu and just sort of exist.
Yeah.
I think Prey only got the buzz because of the quality of it, and a lot of people watched it. But this is the kind of movie that would have been like a late summer comedy.
Yeah, interestingly,
15 years ago.
This movie was originally held by Netflix, and it was supposed to be developed for Netflix. Yeah.
So it was always meant to be streaming. But,
yeah.
Anyway, let's move. You can watch it right now on Hulu if you're so inclined. Let's move on to our next movie, Radical.
¡Órale, apúrense! Yo no voy a decidir lo que van a aprender. Eso lo van a decidir ustedes. Puede ser lo que sea, ¿eh? Lo que sea.
Pero ¿cómo vamos a sacar buenas calificaciones?
¿Qué importan las calificaciones?
¿Habían tenido una clase así antes? Nunca había tenido un maestro así.
Señor Juárez, este lugar. A nadie le importa un carajo lo que pasa aquí. ¿Usted pidió venir aquí? ¿Para qué?
Pues, solo quería probar algo distinto.
No vaya a patear el avispero, ¿ok?
No, ¿cómo cree que? No.
¿Pero odia la escuela? ¿Qué pasó?
Hay un profesor que él hace las cosas diferentes.
No son bancas, son botes salvavidas. ¡Sálvenlo! ¡Vamos!
¿Qué va a hacer después? ¿Convertir el patio en un salón de clases?
¡Rotación! ¡Todos! ¡Movimiento de rotación! Nada ha cambiado en la educación en los últimos 100 años. Pero resulta que estos niños son bien abusados.
¿Tú crees que yo podría ser ingeniero aeroespacial?
Lo que cada uno de ustedes necesita, ya lo tienen. Potencial. Señor Juárez.
This is a Spanish language film, as you can see, based on a true story of a teacher, Sergio Juarez. This is set in Matamoros, Mexico. Cody, tell us about Radical and what you thought of it.
Yeah, so this is a movie I saw at Sundance back in January, where it won an audience award. And yeah, it's a story that's basically, like you mentioned, it's based on a true story about a school in Matamoros where it's one of the lowest performing schools in Mexico, and it's dangerous, and there's a lot of kids there who have a lot of family commitments, and this teacher, played by Eugenio Derbez, has the opportunity to teach at that school, and takes a different kind of radical approach, in that he moves away from sort of like the standardized tests and decides to let the students decide what they want to learn about, trying to spark curiosity and interest in learning, and then you see the results. And for me, the best part about this movie is how it balances out what is ultimately a done, like we've seen this before type story, where there's a lot of it storyline wise, or even just like like moments in it that are derivative or generic. There's some melodrama in it, but it's like every moment of something that's generic or melodramatic is balanced out with something that feels very authentic and very real. And it's something that I think is like the strength of the movie, where it creates this really nice balance, because I think, I'll start with Derbez, who I think is an interesting actor, because he's been well known for comedy, but I've never seen a comedy that he's done. I'm not familiar with this stuff that he's done. I know he's done, like, he did that movie with like Samara Weaving, right? Like about the valet or something like that. Oh,
like his first like big American film, right? Wasn't that it?
No, well, he also did How to Be a Latin Lover. I don't know.
Oh, that's the one I'm thinking of. That's what I'm thinking of.
And then
I don't know the one with Samara Weaving you're talking about.
Yeah, he did the Overboard remake, and then he did the Samara Weaving was
with
the
Anna
valet.
Faris, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I believe so.
Overboard remake.
Yeah.
I never saw it.
And so I didn't know his stuff, but I got to first time seeing him doing dramatic stuff in Coda at Sundance a couple years ago, and it was a strong, a solid, not like Oscar worthy performance, but solid, right? And I think he was really solid in that movie. And apparently, I was reading an interview that said that he's always wanted to make the turn to dramatic, but it wasn't until that performance in Coda hit that he like went all in. And I think this is a really good performance from him in this movie. I think that it's a way better performance than Coda. And I think the thing that he does really well is he plays like two sides of the coin here, where like towards the kids he acts kind of like aloof and relaxed and totally in control, even not with the kids but with the administration, but like there's an underlying sense of like he's like desperate for this to work, right? And you can see that there's moments where he'll do something and then he'll go hide out and wait for a reaction, and you can see like in his face that he really is hoping that it will work. And I think it's got that dual sort of like it's the sort of passion for teaching and the passion for learning, kind of two sides of that coin that I think are done well. Like I said, I think that again the stakes feel real in the movie, and I feel like it's really grounded in its authenticity. You can see stuff like poverty in the homes, and the idea that like one of the kids essentially has to be a parent to the younger kids, and there's like expectations. There's people who are expected to help at home and they're not expected to go to school or anything like that. And there's a couple of moments, especially towards the end of the movie, where like again this movie is not afraid to show the realistic outcomes of this situation. Like in a sort of feel good movie, like every kid would make it and have a possibility of going to college or getting scholarships or whatever. And it's not the reflection of reality, and it's not the reflection of what this movie does. You see outcomes for certain like main characters of the movie that are like genuinely shocking, I think. You also see, it all leads up to this big test, and you're thinking that, all of the kids are going to run in at the deadline and make it, and like some of them don't make it, and that's the reality of that situation. And I really liked the punctuation of like, this is not a story that is like entirely uplifting, and even despite opportunities, sometimes they just can't be taken because of the situation that they're in. And for me, that realism keeps it really heavily grounded. It's not like I'm sitting there like enjoying that part about it, but it's like, it's authentic, it's real. And so, like I said, every time it falls into, you know, melodrama or, you know, sort of like generic, like untapped potential genius held back, or like the sort of tug of war between crime and in the classroom or whatever. For every generic moment it hits, I think there's a really hard hitting real one, and I think that balance sends it into something that I thought is really solid.
You know, I didn't know much going into this film before watching it. I didn't realize, first of all, it was based on a true story. And it's taken from a Wired article called "A Radical Way of Unleashing a Generation of Geniuses," and it's literally about, you know, this school. And I guess the reasoning behind like it felt cliche, and I don't. In this case, I don't mean that in a bad way. Like I guess the metaphor I'd like to use is like a comfortable shoe, like the kind of you know, inspirational teacher comes in and teaches a class of kids with potential, but not opportunity, how to access that opportunity and by tapping into their potential. You know, that it's set in a border town, you know, in the midst of an ongoing kind of deterioration into drug crime and things like that is the realistic thing that really kind of hits home here. I think, you know, it doesn't really shy away from that either, which to its credit is, you know, to its credit, it doesn't really kind of, you know, sanitize things and make them, you know, like you said, there's realistic consequences for some of these actions, and it's fairly graphic at times. You know, that said, every single moment you feel that sort of inspirational teacher drama happen. You know, it's familiar and it feels good, and it inspires you and uplifts you. You know, I think the biggest thing in here is that you're seeing sort of this version of that story from that perspective that you don't necessarily see. I don't know how many times you've been to the Mexican border. I mean, it's not a happy place.
Right.
Crime and corruption have decimated what was there before. And this movie touches on that. This movie touches on the corruption of the school administration. You know, a running through line is that the school doesn't have computers and was promised computers, and even when like strings are pulled to actually get the computers, it doesn't happen.
Right.
And the corruption kind of goes all the way to the top, and it's you know, kind of a real kick in the ass for that. You know, the teacher Derbez plays. You know, I think it's, you know, I didn't know what to expect going into it. I think the title is terrible. I think it implies, I think it I don't know. I just don't like the title. It seems more extreme than the film is. And I think it's a really good movie. I think it's a really, like I said, a comfortable shoe of a movie. Like, it makes you feel good. It kind of, you know, stretches what you would expect also. I think Derbez is great. I didn't care for him much in Coda. I didn't love Coda as much as you did. I thought Coda was a little too by the numbers and a little too predictable. I thought his character was not great, and didn't fit well. Anyway, sort of along the same lines of the character he's playing here, and even gets kind of a confrontation scene with a parent here. But anyway, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the movie. Yeah, that's really all I got to say. Cody, what's your grade for for Radical?
Yeah, I give Radical a really solid B. Like I said, there are going to be these moments in there that do ring generic or cliche. But again, for every cliche moment, I think there's a moment that is authentic and real, and like it's a weird word to use in like an uplifting movie, but like gritty. Like, I mean, there's just, there are some moments in this movie that are heavy and that feel like an accurate representation of what really happens, not a sanitized version, not, conveniently leaving out details. In another movie, they may have left out certain details and only focused on, certain kids here, but here you get the full gamut of characters that all have different outcomes, and some of them aren't, happy. And I really appreciated the commitment to telling an authentic story. So a solid B for me.
Yeah, solid B for me too. I think I like everything you said. I think there's a character who has a fate that's not great, that I feel like a lesser movie would have given that character an out.
Mm-hmm.
And this one doesn't, and it's painful, it's graphic, it's shocking, it's but yeah, also it shows that Elon Musk is the hope for our future, even for kids in a Mexican border town.
Yes.
Just thank you, Elon. Thank you for SpaceX.
Yeah, wherever you're at.
Wherever you are, in Bastrop, Texas, I think he lives. I don't know. Anyway, that's going to do it for this week. Next week, Cody, interesting. I'll be kind of out of town, but we may cover something, we may not.
Yeah, well, we've got the Marvels, the new Marvel movie, which I don't know. We'll see what happens with that.
Everything I've read and the buzz is this is like the inflection point for Marvel.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is the cornerstone for is everybody fed up? Because there's been like 2 Variety articles in the last like 2 weeks about the kind of Marvel being in disarray. But this is I think this is, and I don't want to be like we've talked Marvel 10,000 times and on a podcast that we've since kind of not followed up on, but the idea that the homework is finally catching up with everybody, I think.
Yeah, well, and again, nothing has happened yet, so we can't say, but judging on the way that this thing is tracking in terms of box office, this may be the fatigue point, but we'll see.
And I want to stress, it's not because this is a female movie.
No.
I don't give a shit.
It's because it features a main character who has had an entire season of TV dedicated to her and has not been introduced in any kind of movie, to my awareness or my knowledge. That was entirely introduced in a television show. 2
of them. Well,
you're right.
Technically, she was introduced in Captain Marvel as a child, but then in WandaVision, you have Monica Rambeau, you have Kamala Khan. I'm sorry, and then who's in Ms. Marvel. I think I'm like 3 or 4 TV series behind.
Yeah.
I think the last one I watched in full was Moon Knight. I watched the first couple of Ms. Marvel, and it was fine. It seems a little more geared toward teens, which is fine, but I wasn't on board. But I haven't followed up. Like, apparently Secret Invasion leads right into this, which has gotten some of the worst reviews of any Marvel product.
Yeah, I watched about 30 minutes of Secret Invasion and turned it off. I was not into the first episode. So
I read a recap that basically says it means nothing.
I mean, don't most of these TV shows at the end of the day?
And it kills 2 long-term characters, by the way.
Okay.
If you want to know
about that.
Yeah. Anyway.
And then the other movie that opens, which we may or may not cover, is The Holdovers, the new Alexander Payne movie starring Paul Giamatti. Something that has great buzz to it. I'm looking forward to it, but I don't know if we'll get around to it or not.
Time's going to be a big issue because I'll be out of town until Saturday. But yeah, it's got a great old school trailer.
Old school look to it too. Very,
very grainy
and film looking.
Yeah. Again, eager to see Alexander Payne recover after downsizing.
I had a friend reach out to me who just watched Downsizing like the other night, and they characterized it as one of the worst movies they've ever seen.
I got caught in one of those clickbait Facebook posts earlier today. It was like, Matt Damon's career recovers after this bomb. I was like, what are they talking about? I was like, are they talking about Downsizing? And I looked it up and said, yep, it was Downsizing.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't Matt Damon's fault. But
no, the least of that movie's problems.
Yeah. Anyway, if you want to reach us, you can email us at podcast@cinesnob.net. You can find us on Twitter at CineSnob, Facebook, CineSnobNet, YouTube.com/CineSnob. Cody, anything else before we wrap this baby up?
No, nothing at all. So we look forward to either the next time covering those movies, or if not, we'll probably be back the following week.
Yeah, sometime. All right. On that note, I'm Jerrod Kingery.
I'm Cody Vifania.
Thank you for listening to the CineSnob Podcast. To read reviews, interviews, and more, visit CineSnob.net. See you next week.